Okay folks, welcome to Bear Mountain today. It's the 10th of February. We kind of got a foggy day. It's a little bit cold outside. And one of the things I thought to do today is just kind of catch up on some, well, we're going to dry some more apples today. We did a video on drying apples before about how we use kind of a pre-soak with a vitamin C powder. And then we put them in our dryer. And then we can basically, after they dehydrated for about 5 or 6 hours, they're great to be able to use in salads and what have you. But there's also some other things that you can do a little bit differently. When we dried the first time, we dried with the peeling on, and that's great for fiber and it's great for all kinds of minerals and things like that. But one of the things you can do, like if you want to use these things for baking, as an example, dehydrated apples used for making into a crisp, having the peel on is probably not as appetizing as if they were peeled, because most people, when they make a pie or a crisp or something like that, they're gonna peel and core the apples. So then the next question to ask is, what can you do with the peels and the cores? Well, there's lots of great videos out there on YouTube. A lot of the homesteaders have been doing this stuff for years, and they make basically an apple scrap vinegar, where they'll take the cores and the peelings, and even on a small basis, you can make apple cider vinegar, basically. And this is like a half-gallon canning jar. And you can make small batches, you can make large batches, depending on how many apples. Like today, we've got approximately somewhere around 5 pounds of apples today. And that'll probably be enough to just stuff into this guy and make some great vinegar. So I thought what we do is just kind of walk you through the process. The first thing we're going to do is core and peel the apples. We'll slice them up and get them ready for dehydrating. That's not really the point of the video. Then we'll show you the steps that we go through for making the apple cider vinegar. Now, just to backtrack up, I'm using some techniques that have been really out there for a long time. There's actually great books on it too. We'll link to one of them that we have down in our Amazon store, as we'll put it down in the show notes. But there's also some great channels like Melissa K. Norris, The Homesteading Family, Mary's Nest, that's another one. These are kind of like homesteading channels that really go into food preservation techniques and things of that nature. So those would be, some things to look at, some sources. And today, what we just wanted to show is like, we're going to use all of these apples, and then when it's finished making vinegar, we'll just take whatever the residue left is from the vinegar itself, the rest of the cores and the peels after they've acidified, and we'll just add that to the bokashi bucket. So it all just gets used. So the whole point is to take what you can and use it. And this today were store-bought apples. They're organic. This is middle of February. So what it also shows is that if you can come across a deal in your store and you get these apples, you can really do a lot to preserve and to, kind of give yourself some extra stuff.
Isn't this kind of a practice run for when our trees go crazy and drop 1 million apples?
Yeah, when we get finished this summer with the harvest that we have off our trees, we probably won't be making apple cider vinegar at this scale. It'll be more like in a crock. Right. But the process is the same. But
this is why we're practicing now.
Mm-hmm.
Can you use, at that point, fallen apples that get bruised?
Yeah, if they haven't been like on the ground and they've turned half rotten, you don't want to use rotten fruit. But if you just notice that like you had a whole bunch of windfall apples that just fell down and they may be bruised a little bit, you can cut the bruised parts off, and then you could throw, even the whole apple if you didn't want to dry them. But lots of times, when you just see an apple fall, it might have a bruise on one side, but the rest of it's just fine. Yeah.
Dry it and then use the rest for the apple cider.
Yeah, actually that would be perfect. So let's just get started. We'll get these guys cored up, and then we'll show you the steps on the vinegar making. Okay, we've got our apples ready. They're soaking in the vitamin C solution to keep them from turning brown. Those will load up on our dehydrator. And now we have what's left is a Nice big bowl of peels and cores. Now this is quite a bit more than I thought, so because...
Already turning brown.
Well, it doesn't matter because vinegar turns brown.
That's why the vitamin C works.
Yeah, oh, good point. I thought, wait a minute, are you upstaging me? No, just kidding.
What?
What?
I'm just explaining stuff. Jeez.
Oh, I lost my train of thought.
Peels.
Peels. Yeah, so what we're going to do with these guys is now on the peels and the fruit, anything that's in the atmosphere just naturally accumulates bacteria and yeasts and things of that nature. And what we're going to do is making vinegar is we're going to take the sugars that are in here and the flavors that are in the peels, and we're going to, by stuffing these guys into, filling up this jar up to a little bit below the shoulder, okay, probably maybe about a 3/4 of an inch below the shoulder. We're going to pack it pretty good with a mixture of cores and peels. And then we're going to add a 1/4 cup of just regular white sugar. This is to help the yeast really get going, because yeast work on sugar. The first thing that's going to happen in this fermentation is it's going to be creating alcohol, in a sense. And we're not going to put a vapor lock on this thing, but what we will do is we will put like just a covering to keep fruit flies or whatever, other things from flying around into it. So kind of the similar idea of the old paper towel with a rubber band on the top, and that kind of seals it off from stuff landing on it. But what's going to happen during this period of time is this is going to start fermenting and bubbling, and it's going to start giving off a little bit of carbon dioxide. That's what the bubbles are going to be. The first stage it's going to go through is it's going to create alcohol. Now, the next stage in this fermentation process is the Acetobacter, if you want to call it, or acetic acid bacteria. I butchered that first name. They will feed on the alcohols and create acetic acid. So that's kind of the stage in the process. And this all happens at moderate temperatures, no room temperature level. It doesn't have to be super cool, and it shouldn't be necessarily super hot. You definitely don't want it around, out in bright sunlight. So the whole idea is this will happen over a period of several weeks. Most of it with a jar this size will probably be done faster than if you have a larger vat. So the larger the vat, it may take a little more time. Don't know for sure. These are all kind of suppositions. Usually what I found is in fermentations, things that are smaller, particularly if they're kept at room temperature, they tend to go pretty fast. So I'm thinking this is going to be well on its way to creating a vinegar within about 2 weeks. So first step is we're just going to pack this guy in instead of standing around talking about it. I'm just going to get it done. And it doesn't matter if the seeds are in the cores. I'm not going to really care about it. The whole idea here is you want to get all these sugars, carbohydrates in here, and that is what is going to feed our microbiology. Now, the thing about this, you can say, well, why would I buy, something like this when I can just go to the store and get a jug of Heinz distilled apple cider vinegar, and I can get it for $1.90 a gallon, or well, maybe you used to. But or I could get go upscale a little more and get some Bragg's, which is good stuff too. The thing about this is two parts to it. Is when you get finished with this thing will create its own mother over a period of time, and that would be useful for then inoculating your next vinegars that you make. You can also use Bragg's as a bit of an inoculant too. If you don't want to do it naturally and wait for that, you can kind of speed up the process a little bit, because Bragg's, especially with a fresh jar of it, not one you opened up and left in the fridge for 2 months, but one that's pretty new, you opened it up, before you open it, you shake it, it's going to have the mother distributed into it, and putting a tablespoon of that or so into a jar this size would start the inoculation process if you feel like you don't want to rely on nature getting there first. And it may speed up certain parts of the process a little faster. So I'm going to use my handy dandy wooden spoon and just kind of push things down.
You have another tool.
I do? I do, my kraut stomper. That's a good point. Can you get my kraut stomper for me? Okay, this is what we use for kind of, you know, tamping down sauerkraut, which I guess in German is a krautstampfer. I'm not very good with my accents, but basically it's the same idea. As you're pushing things down, what we're doing is we're really tamping it down and just trying to make sure that we pack this guy in. Or if not, a wooden spoon works too.
Potato masher?
The potato masher, or a small, if you can get a potato masher through this opening. But you could use a potato masher if you're using like a wider mouth, like a crock or something like that. That would work fine too. And the whole idea is you just kind of want to get as much of the airspace out, but it's not like you're trying to beat it down into, you know, an anaerobic type thing. You're just trying to get as much of the material in as we can. You know, I thought maybe I'd end up doing 2 jugs, but it looks like, you know, one's going to work out just fine.
Once you started mashing it.
Yeah, once we started pushing it down. And it's like I said, we're not pushing it down to the point where water won't get around it or anything like that. So I got a little bit more to go here.
So we were talking about different apples and the taste of vinegar. We don't know for sure, but we think each one should have a different and unique taste, right?
Yeah, I would think, you know, the difference between like a sweeter apple and a tart apple would maybe impart some different flavors into, you know, the vinegar itself. And that's something I think is going to be interesting to try out this year.
Right, because we have 2 or 3 different trees on our property, and our neighbor has several trees on their property, and they're generous.
Yeah, and
so we want to try that.
I think the one we used last fall from our neighbor was like a transparent or something like that. It was kind of a little bit of a yellow apple. Okay, so I've kind of got it filled in. You can see there's gaps around it, so you know water and stuff is going to go around it. Now we're going to juice this a little bit. We're doing the natural way in a sense. You don't necessarily have to do this, but we're going to put a little more sweetness in this thing to kind of help with the alcohol standpoint. And it's going to take...
Can you move that? So, yeah, there you go.
Okay, what we're going to be doing is kind of dissolving the sugar. You could speed this up if you want, put it in the microwave, you know, get it hot. This is just room temperature water, so I'm going for an overall dissolve. I mean, we didn't put so much in that it's super saturated. So you can see the water is losing its cloudiness, which means the sugar's kind of dissolved into it. And that's the whole idea. It's enough in a sense that you're spiking it, so to speak. Okay, this is about 4 cups or a little bit more than a liter. And we're going to fill this guy so that we cover all of the apple core and stuff. We want this material over the top. And I'm going to leave a little bit of headspace here because this may expand or may decide to push up. And what I want to do is I want to make certain that the material is forced down into it, it's underneath the water itself. And one of the things that we can do, I'm just pushing things down there with my hand. I think I can put a little more water in here just to cover it just a little more. I want to make sure these guys stay covered. Now this time of year I don't really have anything like a grape leaf to put over it, but what I could do is just use like a smaller canning jar. This is, I don't know, what, a half pint?
Yes.
Roughly. And it'd fit in and use that, the weight of that, basically to push down the material underneath the actual water solution itself. Still leaves an air gap around it. And then we can use paper towel, or you could use an old t-shirt or something of that nature. All I'm going to do is just put a rubber band around the top. I know it looks kind of weird, doesn't it? Looks like it's got a little rocket ship. It's about ready to take off. So the material is underneath, and we've got solution all the way around it. Right now it looks a little clear. As this stuff begins to ferment down, what it's going to do is it's going to start getting cloudy in here, and you're going to see bubbles that are going to form around the peels, and they're going to come off and they're going to vent off. There's no real air bubbles left in it. I guess if you saw when you filled it up that there were some air bubbles in it that were significant, you could take your wooden spoon and go down around the sides and kind of release it. I probably should have done that, but I don't think that looks that bad. There's a few air bubbles in it, but they'll work themselves out. So I really want to make sure that the material at the top stays underneath, because I don't want molds and stuff growing on top. But if it did, it's not going to really matter too much, because you can scrape that stuff off the top, because what's going on underneath, about a ½ inch down, if it's even that far down, is still fermenting along nicely. So what happens up here on the very, very tippy top is not necessarily an indicator at all of what's going on down below. Now, right now, it's going to smell just like apples. And then it's going to start smelling, a little bit more like kind of a apple alcohol kind of like smell to it. And then within a period of time, 2 weeks or so, you should start noticing that it's starting to develop a bit of a vinegary odor to it. And the longer it goes on and ferments the alcohols and the sugars into acetic acid, it'll reach a certain point where it starts to stabilize itself out. And you'll know by taste, when you get to a certain point after two weeks or so, we'll start doing a taste test on it just to see, how it seems like it's coming along. Does it taste more alcohol-y, or does it taste more vinegary? And it may need a little more time. But usually what can happen here is you're going to get a nice vinegar out of this. This is a ½ gallon jug, and probably by the time we get finished with it, we're going to have enough in this size container probably to fill, I'd say probably 2/3 of a quart. Because some of these apple cores are also going to break down into solution, and this stuff will start to shrink a little bit. And then the next steps, once we get to that point where we say, hey, I think it really tastes vinegary enough, then we'll do the next steps, which are removing the liquid from the solids and finish it off at that point. So we'll do another video at that point in a few weeks. So, great way to use your waste.
So nothing is wasted.
Nothing's wasted. So anyway, any thoughts?
No, other than, I just think that maybe this will be really good when we have more apples than we can deal with. Mm-hmm. And maybe we just take the whole apple and put it in a crock and make vinegar.
Right.
Because we need the vinegar for making pickles.
Yeah, that's the other thing is if you make enough of this stuff and then you store it off, the thing about this is going to have a lot of probiotics. This is totally different than, your distilled vinegars that you buy. It's going to be closer to what Bragg's is.
Right.
That same idea.
You also mentioned that it could be used instead of rice wine or rice vinegar. Yeah, people have in K&F solutions where brown rice vinegar is required if they have a really good apple cider vinegar, raw apple cider vinegar. It isn't pasteurized. This isn't going to be pasteurized, so it's going to be still biologically alive. It can be used as a substitute for brown rice vinegar. Well, It's not going to explode or anything, is it?
Now, what we'll do is we'll put a little plate under it in case it got maybe, gets
Too
going
rowdy.
too rowdy, put like a pie pan under it or something like that, so to catch it. I would not use a metal pie pan. I'd use glass.
We have glass.
Yeah. Never make vinegar in metal. You're going to get a really weird taste. And, when vinegar hits metal for a prolonged period of time, it can start, depending on the type of metal, if it's not stainless steel, it can start acting kind of weird.
So we'll see.
Yep. So anyway, thanks for watching the video. As always, stay safe, and we'll catch you on the next one. Bye-bye.
Bye.